Hello everybody and welcome to a little bit of a different video today. So with the wrapping up of our North Central Arizona special a couple of weeks back, what I wanted to do is dive a little bit deeper into the post-production process of what happens after I get back from a trip. So I know this isn't going to be a widely popular topic, but for those of you that are interested, curious to know kind of the steps in the process over the last couple of months as I've been editing and releasing the series out on YouTube, I've been recording little snippets of each step along the way, and I'm going to go into that today. So I'll be talking about everything from the script writing to the voiceover recording to all of the normal editing, color grading, sound design, and stuff like that. So I'm going to try and keep it as non-technical as possible. This isn't meant to be a tutorial or a walkthrough or anything, so I hope that you guys find this a little bit interesting, a little bit of insight into what happens on my end. So the first step in the process is right when I get back, and it's offloading the footage, going through the footage, and starting to write the script that'll serve as the guide to the whole video series. So you can see here on my screen, this is the North Central project file. It's got all of my different kinds of footage sorted by type. So I've got drone, DSLR, GoPro, and then all my pictures and stuff. And it's not atypical for these longer trips to be 150 to 250 gig. I'm shooting a lot while I'm out there, sometimes multiple cameras going at the same time. I'm shooting a lot of high resolution stuff in the drone, that shoots at 4K. So this trip ended up being 298 gig. It's a lot. And as I pull it off, I'll kind of go through, watch back some of the stuff. Being in the field, I'll usually have a pretty good idea of what I captured and what I have recorded. But it's always nice to kind of get back home, start looking at and reviewing the footage, because that gives me an idea of what I'm going to do for the final video. So I'll back this up a couple of different spots just to secure the footage, make sure it's not going to get accidentally deleted or lose it forever. But this is the entire folder. So you can see all these different things I captured on the trip, all kinds of video. It ended up being about 1,600 files. So it's really a lot of stuff that I have to work with, which is really nice. Now, as I do this, I'll typically start writing the script, and the script I use as a guide to the video. It helps drive the narrative, and it's something that I use to just keep me on task, basically. What I'll do is I'll just start listing all of the talking points that I want to hit. So I'll go through, kind of reviewing the footage as I do, and just start writing out the story of my trip. And what this is going to do is serve as the guide for the whole video series as a whole. So whatever I put in this script will dictate the flow and the things that I'm going to show and talk about. All of that is part of this process. So you can see here on the screen, so the first part was a little over 4 pages. So as I'm going back and thinking about the trip, I'm adding in all the details about things I saw, and I'm just trying to make it a good story. And that's what this part is for. Overall, this entire thing was about 18 pages. You can see as I scroll through, this is essentially the transcript for the entire video series. And the reason why I plan it like this is it helps to keep me on task. It helps me to really kind of refine and dial in exactly the things I want to talk about, and more importantly, the things I want to show. Without the script, I might ramble. It wouldn't have the same flow as it does for writing the script like this. And this is also a time for me to do research about certain topics. So for this trip in particular, the Black Pearl was one thing that I spent some time researching. I crawled around on the internet, getting some old mining reports and looking at books I have here at home, and really just making sure that what I put in here is accurate. And that is really important to me, is just make sure that I'm listing the facts, providing commentary where I can, and just overall it has the narrative structure that I want the series to have. For a big trip like this, it takes about a week to type all 18 pages out, and it just kind of ends up being what it is. Now on this trip in particular, just a couple of days after I got back, I was actually in the hospital getting my appendix taken out. So normally this would have been done, in the week following getting back home, but due to recovery and all that stuff, this got pushed back a little bit. I was still able to work on it, but this whole thing didn't end up getting finished until probably 2 to 3 weeks after I got back from the trip. So the next step is really just recording the script that you just saw. So I'll sit here at my desk, I'll have my microphone, I have it set up here, and I'll normally put some sound dampening things behind me, but I'll just go through and I'll read the script. And for each episode, it takes about an hour of recording. Now that's because I'll reread through lines a couple of different times, I'll try different takes, and inevitably I mess up lines or words, and it just takes some time to just read everything. There's never been a video where I've been able to just read through on the first take and nail it perfectly. It's just one of those things where I have to sit here and just try a bunch of different ways and eventually get something that works. But from there, once that's done, I'm able to go into the audio editing, which is where I basically go through the hour that I recorded and just start snipping out the things I don't want. So I'll take out all the lines I messed up, I'll take out the different takes that I don't like, and I'm really just left with all of the good takes of the script. And that'll take a few hours to go through, just re-listening to the audio I recorded and picking and choosing the exact takes I want to use. So once that's done, it's just a matter of condensing that hour down to where there's no big gaps in between. And what that does is that essentially reduces the runtime about 50 to 75%. So of the hour I recorded, I'll typically end up with 10, 15 minutes. Sometimes on a longer video, it might be 15 to 20 minutes. So I'm really cutting that down to about the time that the video is going to be, because that's going to serve as the guide for the video. Everything I talk about is stuff I want to show, and this is the time to really just dial that in. Once the audio is cut down and edited, it's just a matter of running it through some filters. I'll do some noise reduction, I'll add a compressor filter on, just to kind of bring the audio levels up to the high quality that I want. And that is why I really like doing it here at home. I try to avoid recording audio in the field just because there's a lot of environmental factors. There's wind noise, there's trying to listen to it and get it perfect, and it's just not fun to be out on the trip doing that. So I'd much rather just go out on the trip, record little snippets here and there, but primarily just work here in a nice controlled environment where it's quiet and I'm able to use all of the equipment I have easily. It's all just very calculated and very concise, and that's the way I like to do it. I get the audio exported from there, and again, that final runtime will be roughly what the video ends up being. So once that's done, then I'm finally ready for the video assembly process, the video editing. Now this is definitely the most time-consuming process of everything that I'm going to talk about today. So what I'll do is I'll go into my editor, just a standard non-linear video editor, nothing fancy, but I'll start dragging in all the different components and the different assets that I created for the video, the final video. So I'll bring in some pictures, I'll bring in the DSLR video, I'll bring in the GoPro and drone stuff, and then the final audio that I just recorded will all be brought in. It's just a matter of assembling it. And what I'll do first is I'll bring the voiceover in, and that'll serve as kind of my rough guide to what I want to show. And I'll start bringing in, the corresponding video clips about what I'm talking about. Now this is a very slow process because I have to go through, I have to find the exact clip. Oftentimes, I'll kind of have an idea of what I had already filmed, so it's just a matter of bringing it in and then scrubbing through and finding the right place I want to start. So I'll just go through a bunch of different times. So I might have a GoPro shot from this section of trail, and that'll cut to another DSLR shot of something different. And it's just a matter of going through all these different things I'm talking about and seeing the elements that I created and just bringing them together. But I really do enjoy this process. It's probably the thing I enjoy most about everything, is just being able to see what I got out in the field and just start forming it and shaping it exactly how I want the final product to look. Now, there will be some scenarios where I have too much footage and I have to eliminate some, and at that point, it's just a matter of trial and error. So I'll try one clip, see how that looks. So I might try a different clip, might be happier with that, or might go back to the original. But assembling the rough cut will take anywhere from 2 to 4 days per episode. It's just a matter of going through the timeline slowly but surely, adding in all these different elements and things that I want to show, just dialing it in. And once that's done, the video will be very close to its final form. There'll still be some polishing things I want to do and some other things I might change. And up until this point, there's been no music. I just edit with the voiceover and the video elements, and then I'll go back later and kind of polish it up. But, just a matter of going through and finding the right things and putting them in the right place. And you can see on the rough cut all of the different layers and the different things that have come together to shape the final video. And you can see just the drastic number of clips that go into one video. One 20-minute video has a bunch of different cuts and transitions and everything that have all been dialed in very carefully. I went through and actually counted how many times I switched shots, and on this first part, it was 271 cuts. That means I had to go through 271 times, grab a video element, cut it, bring the next one in, cut it, bring the next one in. I did that for the whole 20 minutes. So, and there's a bunch of different video editing styles out there. I'm not going to get too deep into that, but I like to be able to show a lot of different things. So by switching camera angles and getting good coverage when I'm out in the field, I feel like that really helps to drive the story along, and I try to avoid the kind of long, continuous take that some people do and do very well. I think in this entire 20-minute video, the longest I have one camera angle was about 15 to 20 seconds. Everything else, I'm pretty much just cutting through, showing different things, just really trying to incorporate as much as possible into the final product that is hopefully worthwhile to watch. And ultimately, that's what I want. I want an intriguing video, I want an interesting video, and I want people to be able to enjoy it and not get bored. So that is just for one part. I'll have to go back again, do this 3 more times for the other parts that make up the series. And you'll notice too that it's not completely done. And this is where I get into kind of the final revisions, doing little tweaks here and there to really bring the video up to the quality I want. So going back through the timeline, you'll notice, there's a few blank spots where I'll have to add in a map, or I might have to add in an animation or something. Just little odds and ends that I don't do initially because I don't want it to slow me down. I just want to go through, knock it out, and then come back later and do things like that and add in the music. And one thing you might notice about this rough cut is that the drone footage looks a little bit off. It's kind of dull. It's kind of not as vibrant as you would want it to be. And I'll talk about that and why I do it in the color correction step at the end. So one thing I really like to do on my bigger trips is I like to show a map. And this will be something that I have to create. So I have my Google Earth track pulled up here. You can see the overview of everywhere I went on this specific trip. So when I make the map, what I want to do is basically recreate the terrain and the route in a format that's a little bit easier for me to use and something that's a little bit more visually interesting. Some people might be locals, they might have been to these places before, but a lot of people might be out of the state, out of the country, and they might have no clue about the geography and terrain of Arizona. So I like to create the map to really just put it all into perspective for those that might be unfamiliar. And so what I'll do for that is I'll just go into Google Earth. You can see I've switched into the terrain view, or kind of like the topographic map view. If you're wondering why I don't just take a big image and use that, the reason is I want to have detail. So if I'm going to punch in on a very specific part of the trail or a very a couple hours of my trip, I want to be able to zoom in. And if I take just one big picture, when I zoom in, it's going to be blurry really fast. So what I do is I go through and screenshot a number of different elements along my entire route. So if you imagine this screen is kind of the overall route of where I went, what I'll do is I'll start down here at the very beginning in Baghdad, and I'll take a little screenshot. And then I'll move over a little bit and I'll take another screenshot. And I'll keep doing this and fill in the grid of zoomed in images which allow for higher resolution, because the area, I'm talking about, it might be 200, 250 miles wide, and it might be 100, 150 miles tall. It's a really big area, and I really want to be able to show certain parts in great detail if I want to. So I might end up with, 15, 20 images wide, maybe 5 to 6 images tall, and I'll just have to go in, screenshot, line it up, and I'll just start creating this much more detailed map that I'll be able to use. And once I have the whole thing put together, I have a really nice base layer to use, and from there I'll go in and add things like highways, I'll add forest boundaries, I'll label towns, I'll add little tiny road signs that show what road I'm on, or highway signs, just to show where exactly I'm at in relation to everything else. So once that's done, I'll actually physically go in and draw my route, a little red outline of everywhere I went. And that's based off of Google Earth tracks and just knowing my route in general. And all these are different layers, so I'm able to toggle them on and off. As you can see, the base is one layer, the route is one layer, all the roads are one layer, and that gives me freedom. So when I take all those elements into the video editor, I'm able to toggle things on and off, fade them in and out, just have a little bit more freedom and make it look a little bit more visually interesting. So I'll do a few color tweaks here and there just to help make the terrain pop a little bit more, and then I'll be done. So I'll drag that map that I just created, bring it back into the video editor and put it in place. So I'll do some animation, some 3D moving around of the camera just to show the route as a whole, and then kind of punch in and follow along as I go. And then once that's done, I'll just drop the route on top of that, and it very quickly becomes an image that I think looks really nice and hopefully is helpful to the viewers to understand where exactly I'm at. So luckily I only have to create the map once per trip. It is definitely a tedious process, but I think it adds something to the video that wouldn't be there otherwise. Is this way of doing it completely necessary? Well, I don't know. It's just my way of doing it, and I think it looks really nice in the finished product. So with all of that now done, pretty much the second to last thing is to start polishing up the rough cut. This will be the point where I add in the music and do some final touches, really just to get the video where I want it to be. So in the months leading up to the trip, or even after the trip, I'll just peruse their online library of tracks and just start picking out ones that I like that would fit into the video series. So those will all be stored in a playlist, and then when I'm ready for this step, I'll just come into here and download all of the tracks individually, take them into the editor, and then I'm now able to start playing around with the music. So then what I'll just start doing is I'll start plopping some tracks in. I have an idea of what kind of sound I want to use during which parts of the video. And for me, the music is really kind of a tool to help set the pacing and set the mood of the video. So if there's a preview section or something, I want it to be kind of high energy, fast paced. If I'm slowing down to look at a mine or talking about the history, I want some kind of slower paced, reminiscent track, maybe with like a little bit of a different feel to it. So this is, again, a subjective process, and a lot of people have different opinions on music. Some people would rather it just be ambient noise. Some people like the music. For me, like I said, I like to use it as a tool to help move the video along. So I've just gone through and kind of placed the tracks in the location I want, kind of all the different scene changes and different moments in the video. And for me, a lot of the music is used to cover up boring sounds that you wouldn't want to hear anyways. A lot of the footage I end up getting is just wind noise. If the GoPro's up on the Jeep, it's just getting blasted by wind. Occasionally it'll just be my Jeep rattling. So there's really, while there is some ambient noise I do use in the videos, for the most part it's just covered up by the music anyways, because I feel like that's a much better product. So you can see, for example, what I'm talking about. If I play the track with just music, no voiceover, it sounds pretty good. The music fits the scene, it fits the mood that I'm really trying to portray. Now if I were to turn the music off, turn the voiceover on, turn all of the ambient audio on, and arrived at the impressive mine ruins. Perched near the top of, it doesn't sound as good to me, you know. The wind noise is distracting, and while the voiceover is good, it just really, I feel like it's elevated by the music. So that's why I like to do it the way I do. So after going through the 20 minutes of video, I'll get all the tracks in place, and then I'll go through and just dial in all the individual audio levels. So if there's a lull in the voiceover, you know, if it's spaced out, some ambient noise, I'll turn the music up a little bit, and then when I get back to talking, I'll turn it back down. So I'll go through the entire project, get all those levels kind of tweaked to the right point, and then it's pretty much ready to go. The only thing not really done at this point is the color correction, and what I'll do is I'll take all of the drone video I used in the video, and I'll take that into another program I use called DaVinci Resolve. And what this will allow me to do is color correct it and bring the colors back to what, you know, would be considered normal if you were out there looking at it. So without trying to get too technical about it, if I were to just trust the camera, you know, it'd do a pretty good job. You know, it would set all the highs and the lows and the color balance and all that stuff at a pretty good, you know, acceptable standard. Now the problem of doing it that way is that you're limited to what the camera wanted to do at that moment. So it cuts off all the data past the highs and below the lows, and you can't really tweak it too much without drastically changing the image. Now the way I shoot on these bigger trips, it's called a log color format, and what that does is it intentionally kind of desaturates and lowers those levels. In the long run, what it does is it kind of preserves those data points, so you're able to kind of tweak them up and down. You have a lot more data to work with. The camera hasn't decided for me, it's preserving everything that it's seeing. So I really like that because I want the highest quality I possibly can, especially on these longer, bigger trips. You know, this might not be something I worry about in just a simple overnight trip, but if I'm going to be doing something, you know, professionally, or I want it to look really good, I'll go through this little bit of an extra step just to kind of dial it in. So this is a fairly quick process. I'll just do it by eye, maybe compare it to a photo I have from the same area from the trip, and just dial in the highlights and the shadows and the color and the saturation and all that to a level where I'm happy with it. And then after exporting from DaVinci Resolve, footage is now color graded. I'll bring that back into the video editor and just drop the clips in place. And when you see the old clip versus the color corrected clip, it really does look a lot better, and it really looks a lot more true to form of what was actually happening in that moment. So I like to do that. Again, just a little maybe unnecessary step, but I really do think it helps to transform the drone footage to get it to be the best possible quality that I can get it. So with the color correction done, the video is now done. It's finalized. All the visuals are where I want them to be, as far as like timing and cutting and color and all that stuff. And all the soundtrack and audio has also been brought up to where I want. So I've adjusted the levels on the voiceover, I brought down the music track so it's not distracting, and added in some of those ambient noises throughout, and it's done. So from here, it's basically exporting the video, which renders out the video in its final form. It packages it all together in one clip that can now be distributed to YouTube or put on Facebook or make a DVD or whatever. So you can see the render settings that I have. I export in 1080 MOV format, the highest bitrate possible. The video's rendering now. This will probably take about 30 minutes. So as you can see, there are 37,200 frames in this roughly 21-minute clip. And then I'll come back when it's done, and that is the moment of truth. Watch the video back, make sure it's good, make sure it's everything I wanted it to be, and then it's done. The only thing from there is to upload it to YouTube, do a few things like make the title and description and make the thumbnail for the video, and then it's done. And with that, that is the back end process of what happens on my end from the moment I get back from a trip to the moment the video goes live. So I really like to kind of focus on the quality over quantity and I want to be proud of the work that I put out. Appreciate you watching the entire trip series. It was a lot of fun to actually go on the trip, and it was a lot of fun putting it out there for you guys to see. So I do appreciate you watching and commenting on that. And if you have questions on this trip in particular or the process, feel free to comment on this video. I'll get back to you, or comment on any of the other videos in this series. That's going to be it from my end. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. I hope you learned a little bit of what I do in my free time when I'm not out on a trip. And as always, we'll see you on the next one. I think we're done. I think we nailed it. Hopefully that wasn't too long.